My life had been a carefully organized collection of small, predictable moments. My days were a steady rhythm of 8 a.m. lectures, stale coffee from the campus kiosk, and evenings spent hunched over textbooks at my small, cluttered desk. My apartment, number 3B, was a cozy but unremarkable showbox, nestled in a quiet, two-story complex just a few blocks from the university. I had lived there for 2 years, and the most exciting thing that had ever happened was the time Mrs. Gable from downstairs accidentally left her cat, Mittens, in the hallway overnight. Mittens was fine, just a little grumpy. My world was a simple, beige landscape, and I was content with it. I thought I was, anyway. Then he moved in. I had heard about him before I ever saw him. He was a myth in the college hallways, a topic whispered about in hushed tones by every student with a pulse. The new transfer student. A senior. Rumors said he was a genius, a star athlete, or maybe both. Girls described him as a god walking among mortals, a storm of dark hair and even darker eyes. I rolled my eyes at the gossip, more focused on my upcoming microbiology exam than on the latest campus heartthrob. My reality was equations and chemical bonds, not some mythical new guy. My reality shifted, shattered even, the morning a beat-up moving truck pulled into the parking lot. I watched from my window as 2 men wrestled a heavy sofa out of the back, their grunts echoing in the quiet courtyard. And then I saw him. He moved with a grace that felt out of place, a predatory sort of stillness even as he directed the movers with a nod of his head. He wasn't a myth, he was a force of nature. His hair was a midnight black, falling just over his intense, dark eyes. He was broad-shouldered and lean, every movement radiating a raw, effortless power that made my breath catch in my throat. I felt an undeniable, magnetic pull, a kind of primal hum that seemed to resonate deep in my bones. It was the same new student. He was my new neighbor in apartment 3A. My crush was now my next-door neighbor, and it wasn't an exaggeration to say my life was about to change. That first week was a whirlwind of near misses. I would hear the click of his lock just as I was fumbling for my own keys, or I would smell a rich, earthy scent, like fresh pine and rain, just as I was getting on the elevator. The air around our 2 doors always felt charged, thick with an unspoken energy that made my skin prickle. It was unnerving, but also thrilling. Our official first meeting was in the cramped laundry room in the basement. I was folding a load of towels when the door creaked open. The scent hit me first, a wave of that same pine and rain, stronger this time. I looked up, and there he was, holding a basket of dark clothes. His eyes, dark as coffee grounds, locked with mine. It wasn't a friendly, neighborly gaze. It was an intense, all-consuming stare that felt like it was stripping me bare, seeing past my messy bun and worn-out sweatshirt to something else entirely. Something he recognized. "I'm Caleb," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the small room. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, of ownership. I felt my cheeks flush. "Emily," I managed, my voice a small, reedy thing compared to his. He didn't say anything else. He just watched me, his expression unreadable, as he loaded his clothes into a machine. The silence stretched between us, heavy and awkward. My heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a hummingbird trapped in a cage. I wanted to run, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. There was a dangerous intensity to him, a wildness that my quiet, academic life had never prepared me for. He was a storm, and I was just a little house, and I had a terrifying feeling I was about to be blown away. From that day on, the world I knew began to fray at the edges. My calm, predictable life started to feel observed. I'd be studying late at night and catch a glimpse of a shadow moving outside my window, a flash of something too big to be a stray cat. I'd be walking home from class, and the hairs on the back of my neck would stand on end, a prickling sensation that told me I wasn't alone. My rational mind told me it was my imagination, a byproduct of stress from exams and late-night caffeine. But my gut, a part of me I had always ignored, told me something else entirely. It felt like a constant, watchful presence, an invisible tether that was somehow connected to the new neighbor next door. The tension between us only grew with each encounter. We'd pass in the hallway, and he'd give me a curt nod, his eyes still holding that same unyielding intensity. Once, the fire alarm went off in the middle of the night, a false alarm from a burnt casserole, and the entire building was standing outside in our pajamas. I shivered in the cold night air, wrapped in a thin robe, and saw him standing a few feet away, his arms crossed over his chest. He looked at me, and I felt a sudden warmth, a protective shield that seemed to emanate from him and cut through the chill. It was a bizarre, illogical feeling, and it scared me more than the fire alarm had. I started to get weirdly protective of my space, of my privacy. I felt like his gaze was always on me, even when he wasn't there. I'd catch myself closing my blinds with a little more force, or checking my front door twice before bed. He was dominant, protective, and dangerous all at once. And despite all my apprehension, I found myself thinking about him, about the way his presence made the world feel different, sharper. I was a moth to his dangerous flame, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, that I was going to get burned. The breaking point, the moment my rational world completely unraveled, happened on a Tuesday night. I had just finished a particularly grueling study session and decided to relax with a hot bath. As I was getting ready to get in, I noticed it. Something was different about the wall behind the tub. The old wallpaper was peeling slightly, and in a small patch of exposed drywall, a symbol had been etched. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it was there. 3 interlocking circles, with a triangle in the middle. I stared at it, my mind racing. Had it always been there? I felt a wave of nausea. I had lived in this apartment for 2 years. I would have noticed it before. A sudden, horrifying thought flashed through my mind. Caleb. The ring he always wore on his right hand, a thick silver band. I had only ever gotten a quick glimpse of it, but my memory, sharpened by my growing obsession, was crystal clear. It had a strange design, a design I couldn't place, and now the image of that symbol on the wall and the one on his ring merged into one terrifying, undeniable picture. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. I stumbled out of the bathroom, pulling on a sweatshirt and jeans with shaky hands. The feeling of being watched was no longer a vague apprehension, it was a cold, hard fact. He wasn't just a new neighbor. He wasn't just a handsome guy. There was something dark, something ancient and mysterious about him, and I was somehow tied to it. The symbol was proof. A mark he had left. My quiet, predictable life was over. All I could feel was a cold, creeping fear, and the undeniable sense that I was in a cage I had no idea how to escape. And my jailer was right next door. Chapter 1. The symbol on the wall was a brand, a mark of something ancient and terrifying, and it had been there all along. It was a secret I had unknowingly lived with for years, and now, in a single moment, it had shattered the safe, beige world I had so carefully built around myself. My hands were shaking as I pulled on a sweatshirt, the cheap fabric a flimsy shield against the cold certainty that had settled in my bones. I was being watched, I was being tracked, and it had everything to do with the man living next door. The symbol on my wall was a silent declaration of his presence, and I couldn't breathe. My mind raced, a frantic hamster on a wheel. I could call the police, but what would I say? My handsome, dominant neighbor has a creepy symbol on his ring, and I just found the same one etched on my wall? I knew, with a gut certainty that bypassed all logic, that this was something law enforcement wouldn't understand. The danger I felt wasn't a normal, human kind of danger. It was something else entirely, something primal and old. My only option, the only path that made any sense at all, was to confront him. I needed answers, and he was the only one who had them. My feet moved on their own, carrying me from my apartment to his. The short walk felt like a marathon, each step a battle between my frantic fear and my desperate need to know. I stood in front of his door, the number 3AA stark contrast to my own. I raised a trembling hand and knocked. The sound was loud and hollow in the quiet hallway. A few seconds passed, an eternity stretching out in the silence. Then, the door opened. Caleb stood there, shirtless, a pair of worn jeans hanging low on his hips. The scent of pine and rain filled the air, richer and more potent than ever before. His dark eyes, which had always held a dangerous intensity, were now completely unreadable. He looked at me, taking in my pale face and wide, terrified eyes, but he said nothing. He just waited. I need to talk to you, I stammered, my voice barely a whisper. He stepped back, opening the door wider. It wasn't an invitation, it was a command. I walked inside, and the door clicked shut behind me with a finality that made me jump. His apartment was as minimalistic as mine was cluttered, but the air felt charged, thick with a powerful energy. It was a living space, but it also felt like a fortress. "What is it, Emily?" he said, his voice a low rumble that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I held my hands out, palms up, trying to stop their violent shaking. "The symbol," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "On your ring. The one you wear." His gaze dropped to my hands, then back to my face. His expression didn't change, but I could feel a shift in the air, a sharpening of his focus. "What about it?" I just found it," I said, my voice cracking with the effort of holding back tears. "Etched on the wall behind my bathtub. It's the same." "What does it mean? What have you done?" He took a step closer, and I instinctively took a step back, hitting the closed door. There was nowhere to run. He was too close, too big, too much. "I haven't done anything to you, Emily," he said, his voice softer now, but no less intense. "But you're right. That symbol, it's mine. It's the mark of my pack. And it's a promise of protection." My mind spun. "Pack? What are you talking about? What's going on, Caleb?" The shadows, the hushed conversations. "I feel like I'm being watched all the time." He sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to come from somewhere ancient inside him. He ran a hand through his dark hair. "You are being watched. By my wolves. They protect the perimeter, our territory. And they've been protecting you." I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. "Wolves? What are you talking about?" He walked to a sleek, modern table in the middle of the room and leaned against it, his eyes never leaving mine. "I'm not just a man, Emily. I'm a werewolf. An alpha. The leader of this territory. And the moment I saw you, I knew. You're my mate." The words hit me like a physical blow. The world I knew, the simple, beige world of textbooks and coffee, dissolved into dust. Werewolves. Mates. It was something from a fantasy novel, not something that happened in a quiet apartment complex in the United States. I shook my head, tears finally starting to fall. No, that's crazy. That's not real." "It's real," he said, his voice low and firm, leaving no room for argument. "And it's why you feel what you feel. The pull between us, it's the bond. It's what connects us, what makes us meant to be together." My fear was a tangible thing, a heavy weight in my chest, but through the terror, I could feel it. The pull. The undeniable, soul-level connection that had drawn me to him from the start. It had always been there, a silent hum beneath the surface of my reality. He wasn't just a crush, he was a fundamental part of my existence, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. "The hushed conversations you heard," he continued, "that was my pack. My beater, Damon, and my warrior, Leo. They're my closest friends, my most trusted wolves. They've been here with me, watching over you." He paused, his gaze softening just a fraction. "They're my family, Emily. And you are a part of that family now." I stumbled over to a chair, my legs giving out from under me. I sank into it, my head in my hands. The room was spinning. Wolves, alphas, mates. It was too much. So all those things, all those feelings, it was real? I wasn't going crazy. "No," he said, his voice a gentle reassurance that did nothing to soothe the panic. "You weren't crazy. Your instincts were telling you the truth. You're part of this world now. And the symbol on your wall, it's a mark of my protection. It means you are under my care. It means you are safe." Safe. The word felt like a lie. I felt anything but safe. I felt trapped. "So, you've known this whole time? That I was your mate?" He nodded slowly. "From the moment I saw you on campus. My wolf, he recognized you immediately. We're drawn to each other, Emily. It's not something we can control. It's not something we can fight. My eyes welled up again, this time with a mixture of fear and a profound, heartbreaking sense of loss. My quiet, predictable life was over. It was a casualty of a world I never knew existed, a world of supernatural bonds and primal urges. A world ruled by this powerful, dangerous man who now claimed me as his. I was no longer just Emily, a college student. I was a mate. I was a part of a pack. And I had no idea what that even meant. All I knew was that the air in the room was thick with a new, terrifying reality, and I had just been given the truth. Now, I had to figure out how to live with it. Chapter 2. The words were still hanging in the air between us, heavy and impossible. Mate. My mind was a blank canvas, every single thing I thought I knew about the world scrubbed clean. All I could see was Caleb's face, his dark eyes filled with an intensity that had nothing to do with a college crush and everything to do with a powerful, primal claim. My quiet, simple life had been a lie. A comfortable, beautiful lie. Now, the truth was an avalanche, and I was buried under it. I tried to stand, to put some space between us, but my legs were shaking so badly I couldn't move. Caleb took a step toward me, and I flinched, a raw, involuntary reaction that made his jaw tighten. Don't, I whispered, holding up a hand. Just, don't. I can't. This is too much. You're telling me you're a werewolf. That I'm your mate. This is insane. He stopped, but the space between us still felt charged, a live wire humming with an energy that I couldn't ignore. I know it's a lot, he said, his voice a low, steady rumble. And I know it's not what you wanted. But it's the truth. And we can't ignore it, Emily. It's too important. Too important. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. My entire life is a lie, and you say it's important? What about my classes? My apartment? My whole life? It's gone. I looked around his apartment, a place that had seemed so normal just a few minutes ago. Now, it felt like a cage, a place built to hold me captive in this new, terrifying reality. I want to go home. This is your home now, he said, his voice firm, unwavering. He was no longer just the handsome, mysterious neighbor. He was an alpha, and his words were a command. My pack is your pack. This territory is yours. You are safe here. Safe. The word felt like a hollow echo. How could I be safe when everything I was, everything I believed, had just been turned on its head? The fear was a cold, sharp blade, but beneath it, I could feel the pull, a deep, aching connection to him. It was a terrifying contradiction. My mind screamed at me to run, to scream, to reject this impossible truth. But my heart was being pulled closer, a compass needle pointing irrevocably toward him. It was an awful, beautiful feeling, and I hated myself for feeling it. He must have seen the struggle on my face because he took another step, a look of pain flickering in his dark eyes. I know you're scared, he said, his voice softer, more human. But I won't let anything happen to you. I'll protect you. You're my responsibility, my duty. My mate. I looked up at him, tears blurring my vision. Protect me from what? What is this really about, Caleb? It's not just about me being your mate, is it? He sighed, a heavy sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. He moved to the small couch and sat down, gesturing for me to sit on the opposite end. No, he said, his voice low and serious. It's not. I wanted to keep this from you for as long as I could. I wanted to let you get used to me, to us, before I told you everything. But you've already seen too much. He paused, gathering his thoughts, and in the silence, I could feel the tension radiating from him, a protective aura so thick it was almost a physical presence. There's another alpha, he began, his voice hard, laced with contempt. A rogue. His name is Darius. He's ruthless, power-hungry, and he wants what doesn't belong to him. He's been hunting for years, looking for something to give him an advantage over other packs, something to make him strong enough to challenge me, to challenge every alpha who stands in his way. My blood ran cold. What is he looking for? I whispered, my heart now a frantic drum against my ribs. He's looking for a hybrid, Caleb said, his eyes locking with mine. A human werewolf hybrid. A person born with the traits of both, a being that would be more powerful than either. They are incredibly rare, a myth to most of our kind. He thinks that if he can sire one, he can command it. Control its power. And with that power, he believes he can take over every pack in the United States. A cold dread settled over me, a chilling premonition that I knew was the truth. And he thinks I'm the key to creating one. Caleb nodded grimly. There's a prophecy, he said, his voice barely audible. An old one. It talks about a human with a rare, dormant genetic trait. A trait that, if combined with the right alpha's bloodline, could create the hybrid he's looking for. My bloodline is the strongest in the country. It's why I'm the alpha of this territory. And you're that human, Emily. He's known about the prophecy, but he hasn't been able to find the human. Until now. Until you and I met, and our bond was formed. He's felt the ripple of our connection in the pack territory. He knows you're here. He knows you're with me. The world I knew collapsed completely. I wasn't just a college student. I was a target. A prize. My body, my very existence, was a pawn in some ancient, brutal game for power. The fear was a tidal wave, a monstrous thing that threatened to drown me. I was a girl who worried about finals and finding a good cup of coffee, and now I was the center of a war between two powerful, dangerous wolves. So, the feeling of being watched, I said, my voice shaking. It wasn't just your pack protecting me, was it? It was also his. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Darius's pack is getting bolder. They've been watching, yes. Waiting for their chance. He's a coward. He won't fight me head on, not yet. But he'll come for you. He wants you, Emily. Not for love, not for any kind of bond. He wants to use you. He wants to create an abomination, a weapon he can control. And he won't stop until he has you. I looked at him, at the alpha who had so casually entered my life and destroyed it, and yet, who was the only thing standing between me and this terrifying new world. My fear was overwhelming, but so was the connection, the undeniable pull that made me want to trust him, to lean into his strength. My life was no longer my own. It was a story of two warring packs, of ancient prophecies, and of a dangerous, soul-deep bond that was now the only thing keeping me alive. The quiet college girl was gone, and in her place was a woman who was a target, a prize, and a weapon. I was in a war, and it had just begun. Chapter 3. The world felt different after Caleb's confession. The constant, watchful presence was no longer a vague apprehension. It was a known entity, a physical weight in the air that made every breath feel shallow. My apartment, once a sanctuary, now felt like a paper-thin box, a fragile barrier between me and the darkness outside. The whispers and shadows weren't just Caleb's pack anymore. They were also the enemy, a rival alpha named Darius, and his ruthless wolves. I was no longer an ordinary college student. I was a target. The threats began subtly at first. The scent of pine and rain, Caleb's scent, was a constant reassurance around my building, but it was now sometimes tainted by a sour, metallic smell I couldn't place. I mentioned it to Caleb once, and his jaw had clenched so tight I thought it would break. Darius is marking the territory, he had said, his voice a low growl. He's letting us know he's here. He's challenging me. Then, the threats became more personal. I found a dead crow on my doorstep one morning, its neck snapped in an unnatural way. The small, lifeless body was a message, a promise of violence. I screamed and scrambled back into my apartment, slamming the door and locking it, my hands shaking so badly I could barely turn the key. When Caleb came over, his face was a mask of fury. He didn't say a word, just took the bird and tossed it into the dumpster, his body language a silent, terrifying promise of retribution. He's getting bolder, Caleb said later, his voice tight with controlled anger. He's trying to make you scared, Emily. He's trying to make you run so he can grab you. The fear was a constant, living thing inside me. I couldn't focus on my studies, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every car that drove by, every creak in the hallway, made me jump. My old life, with its simple worries about exams and coffee, felt a million miles away. I was living in a nightmare. One afternoon, Caleb appeared at my door. He looked exhausted, his dark eyes shadowed, but his resolve was unshakable. "I can't protect you by just keeping you here anymore," he said, stepping into my apartment. "The walls are a temporary measure. Darius isn't going to back down. He's too proud, too desperate. He's going to come for you, Emily. And when he does, you need to know how to survive." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What are you talking about, Caleb? I'm just a human. I can't fight a werewolf." "You don't have a choice," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "And you're not just a human, not to me. You're my mate. The bond is a powerful thing, and it means you're connected to this world in a way you can't imagine. You have to learn how to defend yourself, or I'll lose you." His eyes, usually so intense and dominating, held a deep, heartbreaking fear. That look, that raw vulnerability, scared me more than any of the threats. It was the first time I had seen a crack in his alpha facade, and it was for me. My training began that night. Caleb took me to the empty parking lot behind the building, under the cover of darkness. He taught me about their senses, things that had always been second nature to him but were foreign to me. "Your human ears pick up sound, but a wolf's ears hear things you can't even imagine," he said, his voice a low, instructional hum. "You need to learn to listen for the things you've always filtered out. The rustle of a leaf from a quarter-mile away. The snap of a twig. The whisper of a wolf on the hunt." He taught me to identify different scents. The earthy, damp smell of his pack, which was now my pack. The sour, metallic smell of Darius's wolves, which was the scent of danger. He'd stand at the edge of the lot, a dark silhouette against the street lights, and I would close my eyes, trying to separate the smells, to pinpoint the direction of the wind, to feel the vibrations of the ground. It was overwhelming, a cacophony of new information, and I felt completely useless. "I can't do this," I said one night, after failing for the 10th time to identify a specific scent. "I'm just human, Caleb. My body isn't built for this." He walked over to me, and the pine and rain scent filled my senses, grounding me. He placed his hands on my shoulders, his touch a comforting weight. "Yes, it is," he said, his voice faced with conviction. "You're my mate. You have a strength inside you that you don't even know exists. You have to find it. You have to learn to trust your instincts, not your human logic." My training intensified. I learned about pack dynamics, about how to read a wolf's body language, about their code of honor and their brutal ways. The fear was still there, a constant companion, but now it was mixed with a new feeling, resolve. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a student. My life depended on what Caleb taught me, and I was a fast learner. The threats from Darius's pack grew bolder. We found a dead doe on the grass in the courtyard, its throat torn out. A clear message. They were getting closer. The suspense was a palpable, living thing that had settled over the entire apartment complex. We were all on edge. And then, the night came. I was in Caleb's apartment, going over some basic defense maneuvers he had taught me, when the world outside exploded into chaos. The sounds were guttural, inhuman, a mix of furious growls, splintering wood, and shattering glass. The fighting was right outside. Caleb's face went white with fury. "Stay here," he commanded, pushing me behind a concrete column in his living room, his body a solid shield in front of me. "Don't make a sound, no matter what happens." He was gone in a blur, a whirlwind of muscle and raw power. I could hear him fighting, hear the furious growls and the sickening sound of flesh tearing. I wanted to run, to scream, but Caleb's words, his command, were burned into my brain. I stayed hidden, my body a trembling mess, my hands clamped over my mouth to keep from screaming. The sounds of fighting moved away from the building, and for a moment, there was a terrible, agonizing silence. I waited, holding my breath, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. Where was Caleb? Was he okay? My mind screamed for him, for my mate, my alpha. Then, The door to his apartment crashed open. It wasn't Caleb. It was two massive, dark-furred wolves, their eyes glowing with a sinister yellow light. They looked like creatures from a nightmare, their teeth bared in a snarl. They weren't here for the fight outside. They were here for me. The pine and rain scent of Caleb was gone, replaced by the sour, metallic stench of Darius's pack. I tried to scream, but the sound was choked in my throat. I tried to run, but they were too fast. They grabbed me, one on each arm, their claws digging into my skin. I fought, kicked, and thrashed, but I was nothing against their immense strength. My training, my resolve, my newfound courage, it all vanished in a puff of smoke. I was just a human girl, a prize to be won, and I was being dragged out of the only place I had ever felt safe. As they pulled me out the door, I saw a final flash of dark fur and a glimpse of Caleb's frantic eyes in the chaos outside, and then the world went black. Chapter 4. The world returned to me in disjointed flashes of pain and cold. I was no longer in the familiar parking lot with the scent of pine and rain. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and decay, a stench that clawed at the back of my throat. My head pounded with a fierce, rhythmic ache, and when I tried to move, my arms were pinned, held tight by a rough, unyielding material. The darkness was absolute, a heavy blanket that smothered every sense except the cold, hard stone beneath my cheek. I was a prisoner, a prize, and the last thing I remembered was the terrified look in Caleb's eyes. Panic, cold and sharp, cut through the haze in my mind. I was no longer safe. I was no longer at home. I was in a place that reeked of violence and death, a place built by the very monster Caleb had warned me about. Sleeping Beauty is finally awake, a low, sneering voice rumbled from the darkness. I tried to turn my head, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs. A pair of eyes, yellow and cruel as a predator's, materialized in the gloom. They weren't like Caleb's intense, dark gaze. These were full of an arrogant contempt that made my blood run cold. Darius, I whispered, the name a raw sound in my throat. He laughed, a short, humorless bark. The alpha you're so desperate to get back to. Don't worry, little human. He'll come for you. And when he does, he'll find that you are no longer his to claim. He stepped into a sliver of light, and I saw him fully for the first time. He was as broad and powerful as Caleb, but where Caleb held his power with a quiet, dangerous control, Darius wore his like a cheap suit. He was all muscle and swagger, his dark hair slicked back from a face that was handsome but utterly devoid of kindness. He was a king in a dungeon, a predator in his lair, and I was his prey. You're wondering why you're here, aren't you? He said, his voice dripping with condescension. You think Caleb is some kind of white knight who will save you from the bad wolf. But he's a fool. He sees you as a person. As a mate. I see you for what you are, for what you've always been destined to be. He leaned closer, his breath hot and foul on my face. You are the key, Emily. The key to power, the key to a new kind of wolf. A hybrid. The prophecy says a rare human, combined with the blood of a powerful alpha, can create a new species of wolf. One that will be stronger, faster, and more powerful than anything that has ever walked this earth. And that's what I'm going to use you for. You're not a person to me, Emily. You're a prize. A vessel. He didn't give me time to process his words. He was a force of nature, moving with a cruel, efficient speed. He sliced his palm with a vicious-looking knife, a single, deep cut, and held the bleeding wound over my face. I struggled, screamed, and fought with everything I had, but his strength was immense. He was a mountain, and I was a blade of grass. He forced his blood into my mouth, and I gagged and choked as the metallic, burning liquid was forced down my throat. The pain came in a sudden, blinding flash. It wasn't the pain of a cut or a bruise. It was a searing, fiery agony that ripped through every cell of my body. My bones felt like they were shattering, my muscles twisting and tearing. My senses exploded, a brutal assault of sounds and smells I had never known. The scent of blood, 100 different kinds of fear from the wolves outside, the thrumming of my own new, furious heartbeat. My mind screamed, but no sound came out. I was being remade, ripped apart and stitched back together into something I wasn't. And then, Just as suddenly, it was over. The pain receded, leaving behind a humming energy, a new kind of strength I could feel thrumming beneath my skin. The darkness around me was no longer a total void. I could see in the blackness, see the damp stone walls, the dust motes dancing in the air, the cold, triumphant look on Darius's face. My senses were heightened, my body different. I had been turned. I was no longer human. Darius laughed, a sound of pure, unadulterated victory. He moved toward me, his hands reaching for my neck, and a fierce, primal rage ignited in my belly. He had done this to me, had taken my life and my humanity. I was no longer a helpless girl. I was something else. A creature of power. A hybrid. I would not be his. I roared, a sound that was not human, a guttural snarl that ripped from my throat. I broke free of the chains that bound me, the metal links snapping with a sound like a gunshot. I lunged at him, a whirlwind of newfound rage and power, ready to tear him limb from limb. I would not be his prize. I would not be his vessel. But I was no match for him. He was a seasoned alpha, a warrior, and I was a newborn creature in a new skin. He dodged my clumsy attack with an amused smirk, his hand shooting out and grabbing my wrist. A sudden, jarring power surged through his hand, a raw, dominant force that brought me to my knees. The sire bond. The bond that should have been there, the connection that should have forced me to obey him, was his final weapon. But I still felt nothing. The power was there, the dominance, but my mind was my own. I looked up at him, defiance burning in my eyes. His smirk faltered. He looked confused, his brow furrowing. He tried again, a more powerful, dominant surge of will, but still, my mind was my own. My loyalty wasn't to him. It was still to Caleb. What in the hell? He snarled, his confusion turning to fury. He backhanded me, a blow that sent me sprawling to the cold floor, the taste of blood in my mouth. Why aren't you obeying? I am your sire. You will obey me. The ritual, a voice from the corner of the room said. I looked over, seeing a small, terrified-looking man, one of Darius's followers. Darius's head snapped toward the man. What ritual? The Alpha performed a ritual on her, the man said, his voice trembling. To keep her from being sired. He knew you would try to use her. He knew she would be your target. He made her immune to the sire bond. The words hit me with a stunning force, a wave of emotion so profound it hurt. Caleb. He had known. He had known what could happen to me, and he had done something to protect me, to give me a chance, even if it meant my death. The love, the sacrifice, the loyalty, it was a bond stronger than any ritual, stronger than any Alpha's command. Darius's face, a mask of arrogant triumph just moments before, twisted into a look of pure, unadulterated rage. He had what he wanted, the hybrid, but he didn't have what he needed most, control. He had the weapon, but he couldn't fire it. I was his captive, but I was still Caleb's mate. I was still my own person. And in the face of his fury, that was a victory greater than any power he could wield. I was a hybrid now, trapped in a cage, but my mind, my will, my heart, they were free. And I knew, with a certainty that burned like a fire in my soul, that Caleb would be coming for me. Chapter 5. The world had been a maelstrom of noise and chaos, the sickening crunch of bones, the furious snarls of my pack fighting off Darius's wolves. I was a storm of a man, a whirlwind of muscle and instinct, protecting my territory, my home. But in the midst of the battle, a single, horrifying sound cut through the din, Emily's scream. It was short, choked off, and it was a sound that ripped through my soul like a blade. My head snapped toward my apartment complex, toward her, but I was surrounded. 2 of Darius's wolves were on me, their yellow eyes filled with a predatory hunger. I dispatched them with a ferocity that surprised even me, my claws tearing through flesh with a sickening ease. But it was too late. I sprinted back to my apartment, my heart a frantic drum against my ribs, the scent of her, the scent of pine and rain, fading, replaced by the acrid, metallic stink of the traitors who had taken her. My apartment door was broken, splintered wood scattered on the floor. I burst inside, my nostrils flaring, trying to find her scent. It was gone. Replaced by the reek of Darius and his mangy cares. They hadn't just come to fight, they had come for her. They had come for my mate. A guttural, furious growl tore from my chest, a sound that was more wolf than man. My pack, hearing the primal sound of my rage, came running. My beater, Damon, and my warrior, Leo, were the first to arrive, their faces grim, their eyes filled with concern. Alpha, Damon began, his voice low, the attack is over. We drove them off, but they took heavy losses. So did we. They took Emily, I said, my voice a low, dangerous rumble. The words were a brand, a searing truth that settled in my heart. Find her scent. Now. We go to war. Damon's eyes widened, a rare look of fear crossing his face. Alpha, we can't. We've lost too many wolves tonight. We need time to regroup, to heal. We don't know where they took her. I don't care, I snarled, my wolf a storm of fury and desperation. They took my mate. My mate. We're not regrouping. We're not healing. We're going after her. We're going to tear down Darius's lair with our bare hands if we have to. This isn't a rescue mission, Damon. This is a war. And we're not losing. Leo, my loyal, silent warrior, nodded once, his eyes full of the same fierce resolve that burned inside me. I'll rally the rest of the pack, Alpha. We'll be ready to move in 10 minutes. Damon looked at me, a deep respect and concern in his eyes. We will find her, Alpha. I promise you that. But I couldn't wait. My wolf was screaming inside me, a primal agony of loss and betrayal. The thought of her in Darius's hands, of that monster touching her, threatening her, it was a fire in my blood. My love for her was the driving force behind my rage, a dangerous, intoxicating cocktail of protection and fury. I shifted, the sickening crack of my bones toning into the silent, effortless flow of my wolf form. The world sharpened, smells and sounds becoming a cacophony of information. I picked up her scent, faint and tainted with the stink of her captors, but it was there. My mate. We moved through the night, a silent, deadly pack of shadows. I was in the lead, my wolf's instincts guiding me. Damon and Leo were at my flanks, their loyal presence a comfort in the storm of my fury. I could feel the energy of my pack behind me, their shared rage and sorrow a powerful undercurrent to my own. This wasn't a choice for them. I was their Alpha, and my mate was their Luna. Her safety was our purpose. The journey was a brutal, relentless race against time. The scent led us to the outskirts of the city, to an abandoned warehouse district that had long been a battleground for rival packs. Darius was a coward, but he was a cunning coward. He had taken her to a place where his wolves felt at home, a place he could defend. The closer we got, the stronger the scent of his pack became, a sickening, metallic reek that promised a fight. We stopped on a hill overlooking the compound, a dark collection of warehouses and broken buildings. The air was thick with the scent of Darius's wolves, a scent of arrogance and overconfidence. They were waiting for us. They were ready for a fight. They've set traps, Damon whispered, his voice a low growl. I can smell them. Tripwires. Deadfalls. He's expecting us to rush in. I looked at the compound, my eyes narrowed, my wolf's instincts working on overdrive. I could feel Emily's presence, a faint, but beautiful, scent of pine and rain, a tiny flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness of this place. She was here. She was alive. But for how long? We don't rush in, I said, my voice a low, commanding growl. We hunt. I gave the command to my pack, a series of low growls and gestures that my wolves understood instinctively. We would split up, using the shadows and the darkness to our advantage, taking them out one by one. We were a pack of hunters, and they were the prey. The night exploded into violence. I was the first to strike, my claws tearing through the throat of a guard wolf who was standing sentry. A roar of fury and surprise went up from inside the compound. The hunt was on. I could hear the sounds of my pack fighting, the furious snarls and howls, the sickening thud of bodies hitting the ground. This was a war for my mate's life, and I would not lose. I would tear Darius apart with my bare hands, piece by piece, and I would bring Emily home. I would do anything. I would kill anyone. I was an alpha, and my mate was in danger. And the only thing I felt was fury. Pure, unadulterated, vengeful fury. The war had begun. And the only way it would end was with her in my arms. Chapter 6. The world outside my stone prison was a symphony of violence. I could hear the guttural snarls and furious howls of 100 wolves fighting, the sickening thud of bodies hitting the ground, the triumphant cries of Caleb's pack. The air, which had been thick with the sour, metallic scent of Darius's wolves, was now infused with the familiar, earthy smell of pine and rain. He was here. He had come for me. My heart, a new, stronger, furious organ, hammered against my ribs. I wasn't a human anymore, a simple girl to be rescued. I was a hybrid, a creature of power trapped in a cage. And I had a part to play in this war. I wasn't going to be a damsel in distress. I was going to be a warrior. I focused on my new power, the humming energy thrumming just beneath my skin. I remembered the way it had surged through me when I had broken free of the chains. It was raw, untamed, and it was mine. I pressed my hands against the stone wall of my cell, and with a grunt of effort, I focused all my rage, all my terror, all my love for Caleb into my palms. The stone groaned, a deep, grinding sound, and then, with a deafening crack, a large chunk of the wall crumbled to dust. A new path of escape opened up. My human instincts screamed at me to run, to hide, but my new instincts, my wolf instincts, screamed louder, demanding that I act. I ran out of the cell, my bare feet silent on the cold ground. The fighting was everywhere, a brutal clash of two packs. I saw a group of Darius's wolves heading toward a side entrance, their eyes focused on a few of Caleb's pack members. This was my chance. I tore a pipe from the wall and slammed it against a support beam, the ringing clang echoing through the cavernous space. The sound was a magnet for every wolf in the area, a diversion that made Darius's wolves turn their heads toward me. A flash of triumphant pride coursed through me. My plan had worked. And then I saw him. Caleb. He was in the center of the fray, his body a blur of muscle and ferocity. He was fighting Darius, alpha to alpha, a brutal, bone-shattering ballet of power and rage. Darius was a bigger, more imposing wolf, and Caleb, fueled by his love for me, was fighting with a desperate, animalistic fury. They were two kings, locked in a battle to the death for a territory, for a prophecy, for a woman. I watched, my breath caught in my throat, as Caleb, for all his strength, began to falter. Darius was younger, more ruthless, and he was getting the upper hand. He landed a vicious blow to Caleb's chest, a bone-deep impact that made my mate stumble, blood flying from his lips. Darius smiled, a flash of white teeth in the dim light. The prophecy is mine, Alpha. And your mate is my prize. The words, the sight of Caleb hurt, and the cold, cruel arrogance in Darius's eyes, snapped something inside me. The fear was gone, replaced by a white-hot fury more potent than anything I had ever known. He was going to kill Caleb. He was going to win. Not on my watch. I ran, my legs a blur of power, my body moving with a speed and grace I didn't know I possessed. I didn't think, I just acted. I was a weapon, a shield, a force of nature. I leaped between them, and with a guttural roar, a sound that was both human and wolf, I slammed into Darius, my small frame hitting him with a force that sent him flying backward. He hit the ground with a sickening thud, his eyes wide with shock and fury. He scrambled to his feet, snarling, "You will not interfere, hybrid. I am your alpha." He surged toward me, his claws extended, his eyes burning with rage. He had forgotten, in his fury, that his claim meant nothing. I stood my ground. My blood, now a mix of human and werewolf, surged through me, a raw power that was more than just a birthright. It was a choice. I was Caleb's mate, not his. I would not be his prize. I would not be his vessel. I would be his undoing. I let out a shriek of pure, untamed power, a sound that made the very ground beneath us shake. It was a blast of sonic energy, a shockwave that threw Darius backward. He landed hard, his body bruised and broken, his smug look of arrogance gone. He tried to get up, but my power, my rage, was a weight he couldn't lift. Caleb, now on his feet, his body bruised and bloody, looked at me with a look of awe, a mix of love and pride. He walked over to Darius, his voice a low, lethal rumble. "She's not a prize," he said, his eyes a deep, dangerous black. "She's my mate. She is our Luna. And you are nothing." He delivered the final blow, a brutal, bone-shattering attack that left Darius broken and defeated. The war was over. The aftermath was a blur of silence and blood. The surviving wolves of Darius's pack, their leader defeated, fled into the night, their tails between their legs. My pack, battered but victorious, looked at me with a newfound respect, a silent acknowledgement of the power I now possessed. Caleb walked over to me, his body a mess of cuts and bruises. He took my face in his hands, his thumbs gently caressing my cheek. "You saved me," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "You're amazing, Emily. You're my Luna. You're everything." I leaned into his touch, tears of relief and love streaming down my face. The world had gone from black and white to a beautiful, violent, technicolor reality. My old life was gone. The simple girl who worried about coffee was no more. In her place was a hybrid, a mate, a warrior. Later, as the sun began to rise, bathing the compound in a soft, orange light, Caleb and I stood together, alone. My pack had given us our space. I looked at him, at the alpha who had so casually entered my life and destroyed it, and then saved it. "What now?" I asked, my voice a small, reedy thing. "What happens now?" He looked at me, his eyes full of love and a profound, solemn understanding. "The choice is yours, Emily," he said, his voice a gentle command. "You can go back. I can make arrangements for you to go back to your old life. To a new apartment, a new school. We can erase this. Or, you can stay. You can embrace this world, this power, this life. You can stand by my side as my Luna, as my mate. You can be the queen of this pack, of this territory. The choice is yours." My mind flashed back to my old life, the predictable days, the quiet nights, the lonely silence of my small apartment. It was safe, yes, but it was also empty. My mind then flashed to this new life, the danger, the chaos, the constant threat. But it was also full of love, of purpose, of a connection so deep it reached into my very soul. My life wasn't about coffee and textbooks anymore. It was about him, about us, about this new, terrifying, and exhilarating world. The choice was a simple one. "I'm not that girl anymore, Caleb," I said, my voice strong, certain. "My place is here. My life is with you." I took his hand, the feel of his calloused skin on mine a perfect fit. My journey had just begun, but I was no longer afraid. I was a hybrid. I was a Luna. I was his mate. And I was finally home. Emily's journey from a quiet college student to the powerful Luna of an alpha's pack is a testament to the fact that destiny isn't just something you're born into, it's a choice you make. She embraced a world of danger and power, not out of obligation, but out of a love so profound it became her ultimate strength. But their story isn't truly over. It's only just beginning. If you were captivated by Emily and Caleb's journey and want to see what new challenges they face as an alpha and Luna, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next chapter of their world. Tell me in the comments below, what do you think Emily's biggest challenge will be as the new Luna of the pack? I can't wait to read your thoughts.